Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it's another Monday, so it's time for my weekly wrap-up for all of you subscribers and fans to talk about what I found interesting in the last week. But I first, as always, want to begin with my newest Patreon supporters, Alexander Bontenball and Michael Kowalczyk. I want to thank both of you for contributing to the channel via Patreon, as well as everyone who's been contributing and everyone who watches and subscribes. We're almost to 98,000 subscribers, just 2,000 away from my silver play button, so we're cranking it out as hard as we can to get there. And I've got a giveaway coming up in a few minutes to help attract more subscribers to the channel. So what did we do this week? Well, we did a bunch of stuff this week. This is like another 5-video week, so I was quite pleased with the output here. We looked at the Seagate Backup Plus Hub. I've got a follow-up video coming up on this because a few of you had a question on the hub part of this. And what this is a hard drive that has a USB hub integrated with it, and it's actually pretty useful, especially for Raspberry Pis and other small computers out there. We took a look at the Pocket chip, which is the handheld version of the chip computer that we looked at last week, so that's definitely worth checking out if you're interested in that. That went up last night. I also got a DJI Phantom 4 drone, and they've been making some improvements over the years on this one. So Phantom 3 came out less than a year ago. Now the 4 is out. The big change that I saw with this one is its forward collision avoidance. You can check that out in the video and see how it works. I flew it at myself, and thankfully I lived to tell the tale. We also looked at the new $50 smartphone that is being sold on Amazon from Blue, and it has Amazon ads on there to subsidize the cost. Pretty good phone. You can check out that review. And of course, I had to do the required Pokemon Go test on that phone. I didn't do it in the review, but so many people wrote in and said, what about Pokemon Go? I figured I had to do a video to look at Pokemon Go on a $50 phone. A lot of parents were writing in actually looking to see if the phone might be useful for their kids because they didn't want to buy a whole new phone and service plan, but if they could tether this one to the other phone, then it might work. And I did have some errata that I wanted to bring up in the wrap-up this week, because a lot of you pointed it out, because I had said that when I had the phone tethered to my iPhone that it was getting the location data from the iPhone. I was incorrect. The phone actually has a GPS chip built in, so it gets its own location from its GPS on board, and then it's pulling in the iPhone's data to get the game to work. So it does work, though. So if you want to tether your cheap blue phone out in the field, you can do it and play Pokemon Go. But I did want to talk about the 1 gigabyte of RAM question that came up in the course of the responses to that video. So the official specifications on the Pokemon Go app are that you need 2 gigabytes of RAM on your Android device for this to work. Now, it does work on some devices, many devices actually, that are running with 1 gigabyte of RAM. However, it may not show up as compatible in their store entry. And I think what they're doing here is probably planning for the future when they add more features. They don't want to get people into the game running on devices that won't be able to run the game in the future. So although it does run on 1 gig hardware now, it may not later. So some may show up as compatible on the Play Store, others may not. And what some people wrote in to say, oh, you can just sideload it and get it going that way. And you could, but I don't recommend doing that. And that's one of those things as a YouTube creator with a growing audience, I don't like to recommend things that could land people into trouble from malware and privacy violations and other things. When you sideload an app that doesn't come from the source, you don't know where it came from and what might have been put in that app in between the time they grabbed it from the source and bring it over to you. So I really caution people to be very careful about what they install on their phones, because even if it looks like it's running properly, you never know what might be running under the surface, and you really need to be careful with these side-loaded apps that you're getting from other sources other than the source. It would be nice if a lot of these developers would just offer the APK to download so that you could try to install it on your device and see if it might work, versus not allowing people to install it at all and then resulting in people side-loading it from other sources. So I just wanted to clear that up in there. And a couple other folks wrote in saying this is such a fad, it's such a stupid thing. And, you know, it probably is a fad. I don't disagree with that assertion there, because I think at some point the regular folks who are playing this game are probably going to get bored of it and move on. But right now it's kind of a phenomenon and definitely worth covering in the context of a inexpensive phone review. But I think, though, it's kind of a fun thing. I mean, I've been playing around with it a little bit, and I've been, you know, catching Pokemon here and there, not doing it all the time, but it's just been kind of fun to walk around and see what's living in the virtual neighborhood. And I do think, though, for a lot of the kids that are playing this is really going to be one of these summers they'll remember, that they had this cool game that came out right when school ended for the year, and they could go out and play and search for Pokemon with their friends and everything. And it is bringing people together, and it's getting people out and about and meeting over a shared experience. And there's not enough of these shared experiences going on right now in the media, positive shared experiences. This is a nice thing, I think, for getting people together and to have some fun together. And I really don't see anything wrong with it. And it's free. You can't beat the price. So that is always a good thing. Games used to cost a lot more when I was a kid. So now let's talk about the big giveaway, and that you can enter at Lon.TV/enter. I'm going to be doing a monthly giveaway to start, because I got a bunch of stuff banked up already, so we're going to start playing around with some giveaways. Eventually, we'll increase the frequency of giveaways, but the first giveaway of this monthly schedule is going to be the $315 gaming PC that I built with my own hands right here on the channel about a month ago. I've got one more video to shoot with it, and then it's going to be ready to find a new home. So definitely enter yourself over at Lon.TV/enter. And we'll be doing the drawing, I think, next Sunday night or Monday afternoon, and then we'll announce the winner right here on the wrap-up. And now it's time for some news, and Nintendo is in the news, not for Pokemon Go now, but because of this. This is the new NES Mini console, announced out of nowhere. Nintendo said, hey, we're coming out with this thing in November. They're clearly trying to find some ways to get some quick hits here to appease their investors, and I think this one will. This is the most shared post I've ever put on my Facebook page, just to give you an idea as to the hype about this device. I think just a lot of nostalgia for this. And what this is a little plug and play that will run 30 old Nintendo games on your HD television. So it has an HDMI output, so it's a lot nicer than some of those other plug and play units we've seen that often rely on batteries and composite outputs. This will plug into your HDMI port on your HD or 4K television. Your games will never look better. And what's nice about this too is that the controllers, it comes with a controller, and they also sell a controller separately. These will plug into your Wii and your Wii U. So we've got an official Nintendo 8-bit controller coming out for the first time probably in 20 years, which is great. So you can stock up and get a controller to work with your other Nintendo consoles if you're playing some of those old school games as well. And I really like what they did with the graphic design here. And I'm going to make a prediction about this because the Wii U sales have not been good. In fact, I went on Nintendo's investor relations page today to kind of get a look at their current sales versus their prior generation consoles. And the Wii U has only sold 12.8 million units, which is a shame because there are some awesome games on the Wii U, but they're all first-party games, and I think a lot of folks who are buying game consoles are looking for a little bit more now than just the game console. They want other kind of multimedia experiences, but these other new consoles are much more powerful. Even though they cost a little bit more, there's such a much broader library of games available to the point where I think Nintendo's starting to lose a lot of people because their games are not where people are kind of gravitating towards in the market. And I think they're going to sell more of that flashback console, the NES Mini console, whatever they call it, than they have sold of Wii U's to date. They might actually hit that 12 million unit number in the holiday season alone, maybe in the first year, just to give you a sense as to where things are at for Nintendo right now. And Nintendo's been an interesting company because they focus both on making good hardware and unique and creative hardware, because you really can't argue with the fact that, especially in the last probably 5 or 8 years, their consoles have been very unique. The dual screen DS, the 3DS, the Wii U, even the Wii was very unique when it came out, when it did. So they've really been pushing the envelope on hardware. But I think where people are going now with hardware is to a more commoditized environment now. I've got games that I can install on my iPad that run on an Apple TV. If you're on the Android platform, there are hundreds of games that you can play on your phone, on your little game console that's running Android. You can play it on your Android TV devices. I mean, it's almost to the point where the hardware has become just a total commodity, and really what you're after is the screen that's most convenient to get in front of you right now. And Nintendo's been just staying with the same hardware-software model they've been on for a very long period of time. And I think they've got to make some changes here. Take a look at their overall stock value here. So this bump in the middle correlates directly to the success that they had with both the Wii and the Nintendo DS. And both of these devices really hit the market at the right time. The Wii hit the market right when people were not yet into HD televisions just yet, so they could sell a game console that had a lot of capability, yet wasn't very expensive and had all that motion controls and stuff that really attracted a wider audience. They really hit the market right when they needed to on that, because once most of the HD televisions got into place, people wanted better image quality, and they kind of moved on from there. The Nintendo DS to some degree also, in that it came out really before the whole mobile revolution happened, and we all had smartphones that were capable of playing games as well or better than the DS did. So now we're at a point where we all have these devices, these commodity devices, even the game consoles from Sony and Microsoft. Really, the only thing that differentiates them from each other is the software they run. I mean, sure, the PS4 has different cores available and everything else, but at the heart, both of those systems are running with the same hardware. The same processors, the same GPUs, and just about everything else inside is very much similar to each other. Back when I was a kid, you could not play games on a computer as well as you could play them on a console, and the consoles were far less money. There was a real reason to own the console hardware. So I think what Nintendo needs to do moving forward is to start focusing on software, even though it might be hard for them to get away from their business model that they've had since the inception of their entry into the video games market. Because take a look at what their shareholders responded to when Pokemon became a hit. That big bump in stock value happened right when Pokemon suddenly was widely adopted. It's really one of the first true Nintendo games since maybe the ColecoVision not to be released on a Nintendo console, yet it's become wildly popular. This wouldn't have been close to the response had it been just put on the 3DS as an example, given how few units are out there for that device, but really the broad swath of devices out there that can run Pokemon Go, both from Apple and all the different Android devices out there. So I think Nintendo's really got to make some changes here, and it's funny that there's so much hype and excitement for this game console that plays games they made 30 years ago. Nobody's excited about the stuff they have now out in the consumer marketplace, and I think there's a lot of people that would really love playing these modern Nintendo games and paying full price for them if they were just on the platform that they were using. And I think for a lot of casual gamers, their platform now is this iPad or some kind of Android device or tablet or phone, not buying another thing to hook up to their TV or another thing that they have to carry around with them, which is a shame because they do make some pretty creative hardware, but I don't think that's where the market is these days. And I really love Nintendo games. I think the quality of their games has not diminished one bit. You look at their resale value on current Nintendo games, they're still selling very high because these games really are of high quality and they're in demand, but the hardware just is not the business they should be in right now. But let's see what happens. I think their shareholders are certainly responding to how Pokemon was successful, and we'll see what happens from there. So Pokemon Go is really the future of Nintendo, whether they like it or not. One thing that you should check out is an interview I did with Tom Kalinske, who was the former CEO of Sega here in the United States when they were competing against Nintendo during the 16-bit era. And what was really interesting about that discussion is one of the questions I asked him was, Sega was trying all these new and different things, and Nintendo just kind of stayed the course. And it didn't help them in the short term, but it helped them in the long term. It was really interesting to hear Kalinsky's response to that. Also, check out the interview that I did with Blake Harris, who wrote Console Wars. That's a great book about that whole battle in the 90s for 16-bit domination. And it was really interesting just to see how conservative Nintendo was in their business strategy. And they're really executing the same strategy now, 25 years later than they did back then. And it's really, I think it's probably time for them to change, because Sega certainly had to make changes when they dropped very quickly due to the fact that their corporate headquarters in Japan wasn't willing to adjust to market conditions, and it cost them the market in the end. So now it's time for some Q&A, and I've got a great question in here from Stan Sprinkle, who's curious what backup software I am using on my PCs. And really the question should be, what don't I use? So these are a few of the icons that I use to back up my life right now. And it's not easy backing things up, because my philosophy that I've adopted for backup is that it really needs to be convenient and transparent to me, because if left to my own devices, and I think many of you probably share this problem, is that we're not backing up as much as we should be. So I often gravitate towards things that are more automated and get my data safely off-site as often and as easily as possible. So starting from the top left, I use Dropbox as kind of like my go-to work area. So what I do in Dropbox is all my current things that I'm working on, I save them on my local hard drive, but I save them in my Dropbox folder, so those things are immediately backed up to the cloud while I am working on them. It's also very convenient too, because the slideshow that you see for the weekly wrap-up is done on two different computers that are either down here or upstairs or at my other office, and I don't always think of copying the file back over to my laptop down here. So what's nice is when I get down here to start the wrap-up video, that file is waiting for me because the Dropbox synced it all up. And what's also nice is that Dropbox also keeps revisions for me also that I don't have to think about. So Dropbox has been very useful for me there. I also use Time Machine on the Mac, and I use that on my primary work computer, so that is always backing up my system automatically in the background. I actually have it backing up both to my external drive that I have attached on my desk at work, as well as a fireproof Synology NAS that I have at the office also. So I've got two backups going there, and then I have another drive here that I sometimes plug in just to give it a little extra security there for myself. I use Google Drive as much as possible, specifically Google Apps. So I use the document creator, the spreadsheet quite a bit for most of the things that I would have in the past used Microsoft Office for. So I use a lot of those just because they're stored in the Google Cloud. There's really infinite revisioning on those as well, and it's very easy to bring others into the mix on that stuff. One of the best examples is my spreadsheet that I keep for performance benchmarks that I run on all the PCs and tablets and phones that I test here on the channel. That's something you all can look at and not mess up my document, and I have a nice safe backup in exchange for that as well. So really helpful stuff. I'll put a link to that spreadsheet down in the description below. And then I use my Synology NAS quite a bit too. So what I do when I'm done working on something and it's no longer needed to be in my Dropbox, I archive it over to the Synology, and that gets backed up on one of its automated backup things. What I do is I take a drive that I kind of alternate. So I have 2 different drives, actually 3 different drives I'm using now. And what I do is I plop the drive in, let it back up for a day or 2, and then take the drive out, take it to a secure, undisclosed location off-site where I store it, so that if something happens to the house, I don't lose the data on the backup hard drive, because you don't want your backups being next to the thing you're backing up all the time, because if something happens to your house, there goes your backup. So I take those disks off-site and I kind of rotate them around, so I always have a good number of backups kind of spread out amongst a bunch of different locations that I frequently visit, so that I'm making sure my data is always safe. And I've been using Apple Photos a lot, and I know it's not the most popular thing out there right now, but because I have an iPhone and I take a lot of pictures with my iPhone, it's actually been really nice to use that. And what's also nice is that it supports RAW now also. So I can take my photos out of my Nikon, which I shoot in RAW format. I can edit them in Apple Photos. Everything gets synced up automatically, and it stores the RAW file in the cloud. So I am paying for their cloud storage, but it's something I find really useful, especially now that I have kids and I don't want to ever lose those photos. Those photos are stored on 2 of my Macs locally, and then those sync up with the cloud. I can even edit files and photos, even RAW photos, on my iPad while I'm out and about, even my phone, and everything just kind of gets synced up, and it's been working really, really well for me. That's not the experience that everyone has been having with Apple Photos, but for me it's worked well. I do miss Aperture. I do miss a lot of the higher end photo controls, but I often just bang it out into Photoshop if I really want to do something more extreme to it. But there are now a bunch of extensions coming out for Apple Photos that have been really good. So I think that's probably going to be the future for me, is leaving everything in Apple Photos, and hopefully they'll get their search engine optimized a bit in the new versions of macOS 10 and on iOS 10. So good stuff. I mean, that's what I'm doing for backup right now. There's really no single solution for me, but this is kind of what's been working. So I have my big archive, and I've got my Dropbox keeping everything going week to week, and then I do a lot of my work just as far as document creation on Google Drive and Google Apps whenever possible. And I got a great question here from Ian Vrix, who is curious about the Chromebook end-of-life policy that Google has set up for their ChromeOS devices. So basically, at the end of 5 years, Google terminates support for your Chromebook, and you can see a full list of those devices here on my link below. There's not too many that are already hitting that mark, as ChromeOS is relatively new in the marketplace, but I think it's fair. I mean, it's certainly not a good thing to know that your computer will have a 5-year lifespan, essentially, from the manufacturer, but I think if you look at what ChromeOS is and what it's becoming, and what's powering a majority of the ChromeOS devices, very low-powered processors, it's not surprising that Google would want to get people onto newer devices. And quite frankly, I think in 5 years, the web is going to be so app-specific and so app-oriented that these current Chromebooks, especially the older versions of the current Chromebooks, are going to be really slow doing all the things that people want to do on the web. And I think, 5 years for a $200, $250 computer is a pretty good span of time to get out of something like that. And I'm sure, as we all know, I mean, if you think about the phone you were using 5 years ago, most of you probably aren't even using that phone at all. It's probably sitting in a drawer somewhere. And I think the same could probably be said of some of these ChromeOS devices. Now, this 5-year end-of-life thing does not mean your Chromebook stops working at the end of 5 years. In fact, in the link that I provided there, Google even says they don't know what they're actually going to do at the end of 5 years. They might still send down updates as necessary to the device. So we don't really know what's going to happen just yet. I think what will definitely happen is they'll push their institutional buyers off of those devices into newer ones, just because it's really expensive for a big corporation to support the new operating systems they're creating and still support the old ones. And many enterprise institutions are on a leasing program anyhow, so I think it's just a means of keeping new devices flowing to those groups and to keep things moving. But it doesn't mean that your Chromebook's going to stop working at the end of 5 years, and I think it'll be slow, but you'll still have something usable. And by the way, they might actually still support a lot of the browser updates too, even if they don't support OS updates on the Chrome operating system itself. So that's something to think about there. Now it's time for a Q&A for you, and this is for the game streamers out there. So I got one of these in like almost 2 months ago now. I finally getting around to testing it. This is the HD60S from Elgato, and this is a game capture device. I reviewed their HD60 probably about 2 years ago, and I wasn't crazy about it, not because it wasn't a good capture device, it is, but because they were kind of over-marketing it in the sense that you really needed some capable hardware to make it work. This one doesn't have any onboard encoding of the video, so it's very much going to push low-end hardware too far, and even some higher-end hardware might struggle with it a bit, but it does allow you to get a real-time video image over to your computer from your game console or whatever you're capturing, so it's actually really cool in that respect. But I was really curious, though, from you game streamers out there, what software you're using for game streaming, because most people are not using the Elgato software. When I was talking back and forth with Elgato during my initial review, they were saying, oh, well, most people don't use our software anyhow. They use XSplit or OBS or whatever. So let me know what you're using, because I want to test some of those applications out with this new one, because this one does have, I think, a little bit heavier hardware requirements, and I'm really eager to test it against some software that streamers might actually be using. So let me know down below. So what's up this week? Well, we got a couple of things. This one I shot already. This icon is for a app called Moonlight, and what Moonlight does is it allows you to stream games from your NVIDIA-powered gaming PC to Android devices, iOS devices, even Chrome browsers. And I haven't tested the Chrome part yet. I'll be getting to that in a future video. Really cool technology, really nice free app, and I've been playing around with a bunch of different devices, so I'm going to show you how it works on 3 different devices. I got my GPD XD, my portable Android gaming handheld, which is in here somewhere. We also tested it with a brand new smartphone, the OnePlus 3, using its H.265 compression, and we tried it out with the iPad also, just to see all the different options you have. So that's going to be coming up probably tomorrow night, so stay tuned for that. I also got in the GameSir G4S, and this is a new game controller from GameSir. We looked at one just a couple of weeks ago from them. Now they got a new one. This one actually solves some of the minor problems I had with the original ones. You'll see what that's all about a little bit later this week. And we're going to take a look at SteamOS running on that $315 gaming PC that I'm giving away, because I know a lot of folks who are trying to build a really inexpensive gaming computer are going to be hit with the issue of having to spend $100 or so on a Windows license. So I look at how SteamOS might run on it if you are looking for a free operating system to play some, but not all, of your Steam games. We'll be getting to that hopefully later this week as well. Now, if you want to help the channel, you can go to my Patreon page at Lon.TV/Patreon and make a monthly contribution to the channel. We also have YouTube fan funding, of course, set up at Lon.TV for a one-time contribution. Just be sure to let me know you did it, because YouTube never tells me when people make a fan funding contribution, so definitely let me know about that. We also have some great ways to engage with the channel. We've got my email list at Lon.TV/email. I do a once-a-week email now, most of the time. Lon.TV/Facebook for the Facebook page, where I post some interesting stuff throughout the week. The Reddit page at Lon.TV/Reddit. I do pop in there at least once a week or so. I need to be better about that, but definitely head over there and communicate with other fans of the show. And we have my store, which has got a bunch of stuff in it actually, at Lon.TV/store. And just so you know, the things in there I don't have multiple quantities of. So these are the actual items that I reviewed on the channel and I'm reselling. So if you're looking for a deal on something, it's a one to a customer, because that's all I got. But check it out. There's a couple of good things in there, including my old GTX 970 graphics card and my last generation DJI Phantom 3 drone, among other things. If you're looking for a good deal, check it out over there. And if you want a better price or want to negotiate, send me an email. We'll see what we can do, although I am a tough negotiator. Let me know what you think the best price is for what you want. And that'll do it for this week on the channel. This is Lon Seidman. I forgot to do my weekly wrap-up, so I'm doing it here. And thanks for watching. Definitely keep those questions and comments coming, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now. This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.